Chapter 12, Grandmother's Land. At the end of the moon of falling leaves, October, after they had killed Crazy Horse, the Wazichus told us we must move from where we were over to the Missouri River and live there at different agencies they had made for us. One big band started with Red Cloud, and we started with another big band under Spotted Tail. These two bands were about a day's travel apart. Our people were all sad because Crazy Horse was dead, and now they were going to pen us up in little islands and make us be like Wazichus. So before we had gone very far, some of us broke away and started for the country where we used to be happy. We traveled fast, and the soldiers did not follow us. But when our little band came to the Powder Country, it was not like it used to be, and we were not ready for the winter. So we kept on traveling north, and we went fast, because we wanted to be with our relatives under Sitting Bull and Gall in Grandmother's Land, Canada. It was very cold before we reached Clay Creek, where our relatives were, but they were glad to see us and took care of us. They had made plenty of meat, for there were many bison in that country, and it was a good winter. The soldiers could not come to kill us there. I was 15 years old that winter, and I thought much of my vision and wondered when my duty was to come. For the grandfathers had shown me my people walking on the Black Road, and how the nation's hoop would be broken and the flowering tree be withered, before I should bring the hoop together with the power that was given me, and make the holy tree to flower in the center and find the red road again. Part of this had happened already, and I wondered when my power would grow, so that the rest might be as I had seen it in my vision. But I could say nothing about this to anyone, because I was only a boy, and people would think I was foolish and say, "What can you do if even Sitting Bull can do nothing?" When the grasses appeared again, we went bison hunting, and I was big enough now to hunt with the men. My uncle, Running Horse, and I were out together alone one day. I was riding bay and leading my roan, which was very fast. My uncle was riding a roan and leading a brown horse. We came to Little River Creek and crossed it, and just then I began feeling queer, and I knew something was going to happen. So I said to my uncle, "I have a queer feeling, and I think it is something going to happen soon. I will watch while you kill a bison, and we will make quick work of it and go." He looked at me in a strange way a while. Then he said, "How?" and started after the bison. There were several grazing in the valley. I held my horses and watched. When he had killed a fat cow, I went to help him butcher, but I held my horses while I was doing this, for I still had the queer feeling. Then I heard a voice that said, "Go at once and look." I told Running Horse I would go to the top of the hill and see what was there. So I rode up, and I saw 2 Lakota hunters galloping after a bison across a valley towards some bluffs. Just after they went out of sight behind a bluff, my horse began to prick up his ears and look around and sniff the air. Then I heard some fast shooting over there, then many horses' hoofs. Then I saw a band of about 50 horsebacks coming out from behind the bluff where the 2 hunters had disappeared. They were crows, and afterwards we learned that they had killed the 2 hunters. So my uncle and I took as much meat as we could and rode fast back to our village and told the others. This showed that my power was growing, and I was glad. In the moon of making fat, June, Sitting Bull and Gall had a Sundance at Forest Butte, and afterwards we went hunting again. A man by the name of Irontail was with me this time, and we were out alone. I killed a big, fat bison cow, and we were butchering when a thunderstorm was coming up. Then it began to pour rain, and I heard a voice in the clouds that said, "Make haste. Before the day is out, something will happen." Of course, when I heard this, I was excited and told Iron Tail I had heard a voice in the clouds and that we must hurry up and go. We left everything but the fat of the cow and fled. When we got to the camp of our little band, we were excited and told the people we must flee. So they broke camp and started. We came to Muddy Creek. It was still raining hard, and we had trouble getting across because the horses sank in the mud. A part of us got across, but there was an old man with an old woman and a beautiful daughter whose pony drag got stuck in the middle of the creek. Just then, a big band of crows came charging, and there were so many of them that we could not hold them off, and we had to flee, shooting back at them as they came after us. There was a man called Brave Wolf who did a very great deed there by the ford that day. He was close to the pony drag of the two old people and the beautiful girl when it got stuck in the mud. So he jumped off his horse, which was a very fast bison runner, and made the beautiful girl get on. Then he stood there by the two old people and fought until all three were killed. The girl got away on his fast horse. My cousin, Hard to Hit, did a brave deed too and died. He charged back alone at a crow who was shooting at a Lakota in a bush, and he was killed. The voice in the clouds had told the truth, and it seemed that my power was growing stronger all the time. When my cousin Hard to Hit was killed, it was my duty to protect his wife, so I did. And we got lost from our little party in the dark. It rained all night, and my cousin's wife cried so hard that I had to make her quit for fear some enemy might hear her and find us. When we reached the big camp in the morning, my relatives began mourning for my cousin, Hard to Hit. They would put their arms across each other's shoulders and wail. They did this all day long, and I had to do it too. I went around crying, "Home, home," and saying over and over, "My cousin, he thought so much of me, and I thought so much of him, and now he is dead. Home, home." I liked my cousin well enough, but I did not feel like crying all day. This was what I had to do, and it was hard work. We stayed on Clay Creek in Grandmother's Land all that summer and the next winter when I was 16 years old. That was a very cold winter. There were many blizzards. Game was hard to find, and after a while, the papa, dried meat, that we had made in the summer was all eaten. It looked as though we might starve to death if we did not find some game soon, and everybody was downhearted. Little hunting parties went out in different directions, but it is bad hunting in blizzard weather. My father and I started out alone, leading our horses in the deep snow. When we got to Little River Creek, we made a shelter with our bison robes against a bank of the stream and started a fire. That evening, I saw a rabbit in a hollow tree, and when I chopped the tree down, there were 4 rabbits in there. I killed them all because the snow was so deep they could not get away. My father and I roasted them, and we ate all 4 of them before we went to sleep because it was hard walking in the snow and we had been empty a good while. The wind went down that night, and it was still very, very cold. While I was lying there in the bison robe, a coyote began to howl not far off, and suddenly I knew it was saying something. It was not making words, but it said something plainer than words, and this was it. "Two-legged one, on the big ridge west of you there are bison, but first you shall see 2 more two-leggeds over there." My father had dozed off, so I awakened him and said, "Father, I have heard a coyote say that there are bison on the big ridge west of us, and that we shall first see 2 people over there. Let us get up early." By this time my father had noticed that I had some kind of queer power, and he believed me. The wind came up again with the daylight, and we could see only a little way ahead when we started west in the morning. Before we came to the ridge, we saw 2 horses, dim in the blowing snow beside some bushes. They were huddled up with their tails to the wind and their heads hanging low. When we came closer, there was a bison robe shelter in the brush, and in it were an old man and a boy, very cold and hungry and discouraged. They were Lakotas and were glad to see us, but they were feeling weak because they had been out 2 days and had seen nothing but snow. We camped there with them in the brush, and then we went up on the ridge afoot. There was much timber up there. We got behind the hill in a sheltered place and waited, but we could see nothing. While we were waiting, we talked about the people starving at home, and we were all sad. Now and then the snow haze would open up for a little bit, and you could see quite a distance. Then it would close again. While we were talking about our hungry people, suddenly the snow haze opened a little, and we saw a shaggy bull's head coming out of the blowing snow up the draw that led past us below. Then 7 more appeared, and the snow haze came back and shut us in there. They could not see us, and they were drifting with the wind so that they could not smell us. We 4 stood up and made vows to the 4 quarters of the world, saying, "Ha-ho! Ha-ho!" Then we got our horses from the brush on the other side of the ridge and came around to the mouth of the draw where the bison would pass as they drifted with the wind. The 2 old men were to shoot first, and then we 2 boys would follow the others at horseback. Soon we saw the bison coming. The old people crept up and shot, but they were so cold and maybe excited that they only got 1 bison. They cried, "Hoka!" and we boys charged after the other bison. The snow was blowing hard in the wind that sucked down the draw, and when we came near the bison, we were so excited that they backtracked and charged right past us bellowing. This broke the deep snow for our horses, and it was easier to catch them. Suddenly I saw the bison I was chasing go out in a big flurry of snow, and I knew they had plunged into a snow-filled gulch, but it was too late to stop, and my horses plunged right in after them. There we were, all together, 4 bison, my horse, and I, all floundering and kicking, but I managed to crawl out a little way. I had a repeating rifle that they gave me back at camp, and I killed the 4 bison right there. But I had thrown my mittens away, and the gun froze to my hands while I was shooting, so that I had to tear the skin to get it loose. When I went back to the others, the other boy had killed 3, so we had 8 bison scattered around there in the snow. It was still morning, but it took till nearly dark for my father and the other old man to do the butchering. I could not help because my hands were frozen. We finally got the meat all piled up in one place, and then we made a camp in a fine shelter behind a big rock with brush all around it and plenty of wood. We had a big fire, and we tied our tanned robes on our horses and fed them plenty of cottonwood bark from the woods by the stream. The raw robes we used for the shelter. Then we had a big feast, and we sang and were very happy. The wind went down, and it grew very cold, so we had to keep the fire going all night. During the night, I heard a whimpering outside the shelter, and when I looked, there was a party of porcupines huddled up as close as they thought they dared to be, and they were crying because they were so cold. We did not chase them away because we felt sorry for them. We started afoot for camp next day with as much meat loaded on the horse as they could carry. The rest of it we cached by a tree where it would be easy to find. We traveled all that day very slowly because the snow was deep, and all the while it seemed to be growing colder. At about sundown on the second day, we reached camp, and the people were glad to see us with all the meat. Some other men went back later to bring in the meat we had cached. The morning after we reached home, I went out to look for our horses that were in a draw where there was cottonwood, and 5 of them had frozen to death. The cold was very bad after the wind stopped blowing. We began to feel homesick for our own country, where we used to be happy. The old people talked much about it, and the good days before the trouble came. Sometimes I felt like crying when they did that.